Picture this: a tiny island nation, known more for its strict laws and efficient governance than for its tech scene, suddenly becomes one of the hottest spots for startups in the world. Singapore, often overshadowed by giants like Silicon Valley, has quietly and persistently built its very own tech ecosystem. A digital utopia where innovation thrives and billion-dollar companies are born. But how did Singapore, a place where startups were once considered a last resort for the unemployable, transform into a global tech hub? In this video, we're diving deep into what it took to build Singapore's own Silicon Valley. From government initiatives to cultural shifts, and the relentless drive of young entrepreneurs, let's explore the fascinating journey of this city-state's rise to tech stardom. Welcome to the AI Lib. Rewind to the 1980s and 90s, when the idea of a Singaporean Silicon Valley would have been laughed out of the room. Back then, Singapore was one of Asia's four dragons, known for its rapid industrialization and booming economy, but tech? Not so much. The startup scene was practically non-existent, and joining a multinational corporation, MNC, was the dream for most. Startups were considered a fallback option for those who couldn't cut it in the big leagues. Imagine explaining to your parents that you were quitting your secure job at an MNC to join a startup. They'd probably assume you'd lost your mind. Or worse, your paycheck. The government, known for its meticulous planning and strict regulations, wasn't quite sure what to do with this new breed of entrepreneurs. Sure, there were some early movers, the Web 1.0 guys, tinkering away, trying to build something out of nothing, but the ecosystem was fragmented at best. The tech scene felt like it was stuck in a time warp, with no clear direction, no funding, and certainly no hype. Yet, despite the odds, these early days were crucial. They laid the groundwork, albeit shaky, for what was to come. It was a period of trial and error, where failure wasn't just common, it was expected. But through these struggles, a resilience began to build within the small community of tech enthusiasts who were daring to dream big. During this time, Singapore was heavily reliant on manufacturing and finance, two sectors that had driven its post-independence economic boom. The idea of a knowledge-based economy was still in its infancy, and the prevailing attitude towards entrepreneurship was skeptical at best. There was no established network of angel investors, no incubators, and certainly no startup accelerators. The early entrepreneurs were pioneers in the truest sense, navigating uncharted territory with little more than passion and perseverance. They faced a market that was indifferent, if not outright hostile, to the idea of local innovation. Yet, they pressed on, driven by the belief that Singapore had the potential to be more than just a financial hub. It could be a cradle of innovation. Fast forward to the early 2000s, and the winds of change were starting to blow. One of the pivotal moments in Singapore's tech journey was the launch of the National University of Singapore's Overseas Colleges (NOC) program. Spearheaded by the then president of NUS, this initiative was nothing short of revolutionary. The idea? Send entrepreneurial students to the world's leading startup hubs, Silicon Valley, Boston, Stockholm, Tel Aviv, to intern at cutting-edge startups and absorb the startup culture firsthand. These were not your average study tours. These were life-altering experiences that opened the eyes of young Singaporeans to a new way of thinking. The NOC program planted the seeds of what would eventually become a thriving startup ecosystem. Students who returned from these stints abroad didn't just bring back souvenirs. They brought back a mindset shift. They realized that innovation wasn't something reserved for the elite or the exceptionally talented. It was something they could achieve too. They came back with a burning desire to replicate the dynamism of Silicon Valley in Singapore, and slowly but surely, they began to lay the foundation for the tech ecosystem we see today. The impact of the NOC program cannot be overstated. It was more than just an exchange program. It was a bridge to the world's most vibrant tech ecosystems. Students who participated in the program were immersed in environments where failure was seen as a stepping stone to success, where ideas were exchanged freely, and where the impossible seemed within reach. They learned not just the technical skills needed to build a startup, but also the intangible qualities, resilience, creativity, and a willingness to take risks that are essential to entrepreneurial success. When these students returned to Singapore, they brought with them a new vision for what the country's tech ecosystem could be. They were no longer content with following the traditional career paths laid out for them. They wanted to create something new, something that could change the world. By the 2010s, it was clear that Singapore's startup scene was on the verge of something big. The government, always keen to stay ahead of the curve, recognized the potential of nurturing a tech ecosystem and began rolling out a series of initiatives to support this burgeoning sector. They weren't just playing around. They were serious about turning Singapore into a global tech hub. Government funding programs, matching grants, and incubator spaces began to pop up like mushrooms after a rainstorm. Block 71, a nondescript building in the Air Rajah Industrial Estate, became the beating heart of Singapore's startup ecosystem. It was dubbed the world's most tightly packed entrepreneurial ecosystem by The Economist, and for good reason. Within its walls, hundreds of startups hustled, brainstormed, and collaborated, all under the watchful eye of government agencies like Spring Singapore, now Enterprise Singapore, and the Economic Development Board, EDB. But it wasn't just about the money. The government also worked to change the narrative around startups. They began promoting success stories, highlighting the achievements of local entrepreneurs, and slowly but surely, the stigma around startups began to fade. Suddenly, joining a startup wasn't just a fallback option. It was a legitimate career path. One of the key strategies employed by the government was to create an environment where startups could flourish without the usual bureaucratic red tape. This meant streamlining business registration processes, providing tax incentives, and establishing a legal framework that protected intellectual property, an essential factor for tech companies. The government also recognized the importance of connecting local startups with global markets, leading to the establishment of partnerships with foreign accelerators and the promotion of Singapore as a launchpad for regional expansion. These efforts were crucial in positioning Singapore not just as a local hub, but as a gateway to the larger Southeast Asian market, which was rapidly becoming one of the most dynamic regions in the world for tech innovation. As the government laid down the infrastructure, something even more important was happening on the ground: a cultural shift. The entrepreneurial spirit that had been kindled in the early 2000s was now catching fire. More and more young Singaporeans were daring to take the leap, choosing the uncertainty of startups over the stability of MNCs. This wasn't just a trend, it was a movement. The startup community in Singapore began to grow, fueled by a new generation of entrepreneurs who weren't afraid to dream big. They were inspired by the stories of Silicon Valley, but were determined to create something uniquely Singaporean. Networking events, hackathons, and pitch competitions became the norm, and the energy was palpable. There was a sense of camaraderie, a feeling that they were all in this together, building something that could change the world. This cultural shift wasn't just about the entrepreneurs. It was about the entire ecosystem. Investors, mentors, and even the general public began to see startups in a new light. They started to believe that Singapore could produce the next big thing, that the Little Red could make a mark on the global tech stage. The rise of co-working spaces like the Working Capital and WeWork in Singapore played a significant role in fostering this cultural shift. These spaces became the epicenters of innovation, where ideas were exchanged, collaborations were forged, and new ventures were born. The informal, open environment of these spaces contrasted sharply with the traditional corporate offices, reflecting the broader shift in attitudes towards work and entrepreneurship. The startup culture was also heavily influenced by the global trend of digital nomadism, with many young entrepreneurs choosing to work remotely or travel while building their companies. This new way of working was not just about flexibility. It was about breaking down barriers and thinking beyond borders, both literal and figurative. Education has always been a cornerstone of Singapore's success, and the tech ecosystem is no exception. The government and educational institutions understood early on that if they wanted to build a thriving tech ecosystem, they needed to start at the roots, by nurturing talent from a young age. Initiatives like the Infocom Media Development Authority's IMDA, Tech Skills Accelerator, TISA, were launched to equip Singaporeans with the digital skills needed for the jobs of tomorrow. Coding became a part of the school curriculum, and universities began offering specialized courses in entrepreneurship and innovation. The goal was clear: to create a pipeline of talent that would feed into the growing tech ecosystem. But it wasn't just about technical skills. There was a strong emphasis on cultivating an entrepreneurial mindset. Schools and universities began to encourage students to think creatively, take risks, and embrace failure as part of the learning process. This was a significant shift in a society where academic excellence had long been the primary focus. The message was clear. It's okay to fail, as long as you learn from it and keep moving forward. The introduction of coding and digital literacy programs in primary and secondary schools marked a significant departure from the traditional education model that focused heavily on rote learning and standardized testing. By encouraging students to engage in hands-on projects and problem-solving activities, the education system began to produce not just skilled workers, but thinkers, innovators, and creators. Universities also started to collaborate more closely with industry, offering internship programs and industry partnerships that gave students real-world experience in the tech sector. This alignment between education and industry needs has been crucial in ensuring that Singapore's tech talent remains competitive on the global stage. As the ecosystem grew, so did the need for capital. In the early days, funding was one of the biggest challenges for Singaporean startups. There were few venture capitalists, VCs, willing to take a chance on unproven ideas, and those that did often had to look overseas for support. But as the ecosystem matured, so did the funding landscape. Today, Singapore is home to a thriving VC community, with both local and international firms eager to invest in the next big thing. The government has played a significant role in this transformation, offering co-investment schemes and grants to attract VCs to Singapore. This has created a virtuous cycle. More funding leads to more startups, which leads to more success stories, which in turn attracts even more funding. But it's not just about the money. Singapore's VCs bring more than just capital to the table. They offer mentorship, connections, and strategic advice, helping startups navigate the often treacherous waters of scaling a business. This support has been crucial in helping Singaporean startups grow from small, scrappy teams into global players. One of the key government initiatives was the Early Stage Venture Fund (ESVF) scheme, which was launched in 2008. Under this scheme, the government co-invested with VCs, effectively doubling the amount of capital available to startups. This not only provided much-needed funding, but also encouraged the development of a more sophisticated investment ecosystem. Local VCs like Monk's Hill Ventures and Golden Gate Ventures emerged as key players, alongside international giants like Sequoia Capital and 500 Startups, which established a presence in Singapore. This influx of capital has allowed startups to scale more rapidly and compete on a global level, while also attracting top talent from around the world to Singapore. For a small island nation, Singapore has always had to think globally. Its tech ecosystem is no different. From the beginning, Singaporean startups have had to look beyond their borders for growth. The local market is simply too small to sustain a high-growth tech company, so international expansion has always been a key part of the strategy. Many of Singapore's most successful startups, like Grab, C Group, and Razer, have built their empires by expanding aggressively into regional and global markets. This global mindset has been ingrained in the DNA of Singapore's tech ecosystem. Startups are encouraged to think big, to solve global problems, and to scale quickly. But going global isn't easy. It requires a deep understanding of different markets, cultures, and regulatory environments. This is where Singapore's reputation as a trusted business hub comes into play. The country's strong legal framework, ease of doing business, and strategic location make it an ideal launchpad for startups looking to conquer the world. Singapore's status as a global financial center has also played a significant role in supporting the international ambitions of its startups. The presence of major banks, financial institutions, and multinational corporations has created a business environment that is both sophisticated and globally connected. This has made it easier for Singaporean startups to secure the necessary financial resources, as well as to form strategic partnerships with global companies. Moreover, the government has actively promoted Singapore as a gateway to Southeast Asia, a region with a population of over 600 million people and one of the fastest-growing internet economies in the world. This has positioned Singaporean startups to not only succeed locally, but to become regional and even global leaders in their respective industries. Despite all the progress, building a tech ecosystem from scratch is no easy feat. Singapore has faced its fair share of challenges along the way. One of the biggest hurdles has been changing the mindset of a society that traditionally valued stability and security over risk and innovation. There were also practical challenges, like the lack of talent, the high cost of living, and the small domestic market. But perhaps the most significant challenge has been convincing the world that Singapore's tech ecosystem is more than just a government-driven initiative. It's a real, thriving community of innovators, driven by passion and a desire to make a difference. The early days were tough. Many startups struggled to gain traction, and there were plenty of skeptics who doubted whether Singapore could ever produce a truly world-class tech company. But through sheer determination and a relentless focus on building the ecosystem, Singapore has managed to overcome these challenges and emerge as a global tech hub. Talent has been a particularly thorny issue. While Singapore has a highly educated workforce, the pool of tech talent has often been limited, particularly in specialized areas like artificial intelligence and cybersecurity. To address this, the government has implemented policies to attract foreign talent while also investing in upskilling the local workforce. Programs like the Global Investor Program, GIB, and the Entree Pass scheme have made it easier for foreign entrepreneurs and investors to set up shop in Singapore, bringing with them valuable expertise and experience. At the same time, local initiatives like the Skills Future movement have focused on lifelong learning and reskilling, ensuring that Singapore's workforce remains competitive in the fast-changing tech landscape. No discussion of Singapore's tech ecosystem would be complete without mentioning the success stories that have put the country on the map. Companies like Grab, Sea Group, and Razer are not just successful, they're household names across Asia and beyond. Grab, for instance, started as a simple ride-hailing app in Malaysia but quickly grew into Southeast Asia's leading super app, offering everything from food delivery to financial services. Sea Group, the parent company of Shopee, is now one of the largest tech companies in the world, with a market cap in the billions. Razer, known for its gaming hardware, has become a global brand with a cult-like following. These companies are proof that Singapore's tech ecosystem is capable of producing global champions. They serve as inspiration for the next generation of entrepreneurs, showing them that it's possible to build a billion-dollar company from this small island nation. Another notable success is Carousel, a mobile classifieds marketplace founded by a group of young Singaporeans in 2012. Carousel started as a simple platform for buying and selling second-hand goods, but has since expanded into a multi-billion-dollar company with operations in multiple countries. Similarly, Lazada, an e-commerce platform that started in Singapore, has grown into one of Southeast Asia's largest online shopping destinations, thanks in part to its acquisition by Alibaba Group. These companies have not only achieved commercial success, but have also played a pivotal role in shaping the region's digital economy, demonstrating that Singaporean startups can compete and win on the global stage. So, where does Singapore's tech ecosystem go from here? The foundations have been laid, the culture has shifted, and the success stories are there for all to see. But the journey is far from over. The tech landscape is constantly evolving, and Singapore must continue to innovate and adapt if it wants to stay ahead of the curve. One of the key areas of focus for the future is deep tech. While Singapore has made great strides in the consumer tech space, there is a growing recognition that the next wave of innovation will come from areas like artificial intelligence, biotech, and quantum computing. The government has already started investing heavily in these areas, and there is a sense of excitement about what the future holds. But perhaps the most important factor in Singapore's future success will be its ability to stay true to its unique identity. Singapore doesn't need to be the next Silicon Valley. It needs to be the best version of itself. By continuing to build on its strengths, its strategic location, its trusted business environment, and its strong support for innovation, Singapore can continue to punch above its weight on the global stage. Singapore's push into deep tech is being driven by initiatives like the Research, Innovation and Enterprise (RI) 2025 plan, which outlines the government's strategy for positioning the country as a global leader in advanced technology. This includes significant investments in research and development, as well as efforts to foster collaboration between academia, industry, and government. The country's emphasis on sustainability and smart city technologies is also expected to be a major growth area, with Singapore positioning itself as a living laboratory for innovative solutions to urban challenges. As the global tech landscape continues to evolve, Singapore's ability to innovate, adapt, and lead in these emerging fields will be critical to its continued success as a global tech hub. We've just journeyed through Singapore's incredible rise to becoming a global tech hub, but the story doesn't end here. Asia is a hotbed of innovation, with each country bringing its own unique flavor to the tech world. If you're eager to expand your understanding of this vibrant landscape, we've got some videos lined up that you won't want to miss. First, check out how Indonesia became a hub for innovation. Indonesia might not always be in the spotlight, but it's rapidly emerging as a key player in the global tech scene. This video takes you through the remarkable transformation of Indonesia's startup ecosystem, from Jakarta's bustling streets to the innovative minds driving the country's tech growth. If Singapore's story inspired you, Indonesia's journey is sure to captivate you as well. Next, there's how Singapore became a unicorn breeding ground. We've touched on some of the success stories, but this video dives deeper into how Singapore consistently churns out billion-dollar companies. Learn about the unique combination of factors, government initiatives, strategic investments, and a robust talent pool that have turned this small nation into a unicorn factory. If you're curious about how Singapore keeps leading the charge in tech, this video is a must-see. And for a broader perspective, don't miss Asia's Startup Titans, a comparative analysis of India and China. India and China are both powerhouses in the tech world, but their paths to dominance have been markedly different. This video compares the two, highlighting the distinct strategies and challenges each country faces. Whether you're interested in China's rapid scale-up or India's innovative approach, this comparative analysis will give you deeper insights into Asia's startup giants. These videos are the perfect next step if you want to understand the broader context of Singapore's tech rise within the Asian landscape. So, before you go, be sure to explore these stories of innovation and growth from across the region. So, what do you think? Can Singapore maintain its momentum and continue to grow as a global tech hub? Or will it face new challenges that could slow its progress? If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon so you don't miss any future updates. Check out the videos appearing on your screen right now for more insights and stories from the world of technology. This is the AI Lib. Stay tuned.